If you ain't angry by oppression, if you ain't angry about 400 years of getting killed, that don't make you fucking question. If you ain't angry about no justice, if you ain't tired of seeing your people suffering with no power to do nothing. Brother got his head cut off down to Mississippi. Another brother got choked out just for fucking pissing. You niggas need to listen. I just showed y'all the vision from past to present, and we still in the same condition.
Salute. What's going on? What you get back up?
Steve Harvey, bitch ass, and this whole morning group. What about white left when they hated just to help? Carrying my ass, nigga, you left.
Y'all some Chopper Rocket Thigh. What's going on, Ricardo?
You Haitian too. That 16 million you took was water and food. You cock outside of we Lugau. Now you niggas see. Tell them cheap suck G. Don't never ask me why I'm motherfucking angry. Even though they holding hands, claiming to be best friends, they still hate you in the end. Angry black man.
Shalom, y'all, some Chopper Rocket Thumb to all the brothers, your house, Shema, thought about some y'all little sisters. What's going on with y'all, man? Angry Black Man Media in full effect. Chief Sock G in the building. Captain Soccer War. For those of you that's tuning in that may be uninitiated, straight out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under command of General Yohana since 1969. For some of you, that may not mean anything, but for those who are in the know, that means I'm certified, authentic, official, and the real McCoy, man. Y'all live with me on the Angry Perspective. Coming to y'all today to talk about, man, some very poignant things that's going on here in this land of captivity, in this sinful kingdom on the earth, what we call America. You know what I'm saying? Understand that the Angry Perspective is brought to you by the Spirit of the Most High in Christ, Spirit of truth and righteousness, and exposing all of the wicked and dispelling all of the lies and the rumors that exist out there that keep our people from being able to climb out of the hole that we're in and become the people that the Most High called us to be, man. We're going to use this platform to speak the truth. We're going to use this platform, you know what I'm saying, to go into the weeds of what the media is telling you, to really pull out the essence of what our people need to understand and take from what's going on in this society so that we can better prepare ourselves for the kingdom that is to come. With that being said, y'all see the title of today's show. We're talking about plagues of biblical proportions. You know what I'm saying? We're going to speak about the BRICS. We're going to talk about Tucker Carlson. And we're going to end it off with a discussion of the Utah River. So with everybody tuning in, man, first and foremost, if y'all can like and share and let everybody know we live. Like and share, let everybody know we live. I'm going to try to, I made a pledge to myself, man. I'm going live every day for the next month and a half. Next 2 months, y'all going to see me for at least an hour on an Angry Perspective. There's a whole lot that's going on that need to be talked about and need to be touched on. And, you know what I'm saying, we're going to get it. I'm down here in Memphis, Tennessee. For our brothers and sisters tuning in, man, we got a school down here in Memphis. All you brothers and sisters, man, if you're in the Memphis, Tennessee, and surrounding areas, come on and get down with your brothers in the ISUPK. We got a building at 3000 Walnut Grove Road, Suite 215. We have classes from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. The ISUPK, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, is a safe haven, you understand, for all so-called black and brown people in this country, whether you're so-called Negro, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, Indian, Indigenous, sovereign, whatever you want to call yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you are a descendant of the diaspora that occurred in this Western Hemisphere, then chances are you my brother. You know what I'm saying? You my sister. So get on up with your folks, man. Having said that, we living in a time of a lot of upheaval. We're living in a time of a lot of instability. We're living in a time where, you know, a lot of things that have at one time considered normal have been turned upside down. And the media and your religious leaders and your political powers that be are going to do everything that they can to distract you from acknowledging the spiritual component that's very prevalent in what's taking place in this society. A lot of what we see, you know, COVID-19 hit a couple years ago. Shalom is peace, brother. You know what I'm saying? COVID-19 hit a couple years ago and it really shut the earth down. And what COVID-19 did was expose the fragility of this Western culture and this Western civilization that, at one point was really being pushed across the whole earth and had the whole earth, in the figure four leg lock. But since the time of the COVID-19, many of the peoples of the earth have acknowledged and realized what was always the case, and that they are all they have if this place falls apart. And particularly for our people, for so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, COVID-19 was eye-opening and showing us uh just how dependent we are on one another. If the bottom falls out of this place and America is no longer able to run the way that we have expected it to run, there is no one that is in our corner. You a black, Hispanic, and Native Indian, the people who you go to get for your beautician services, get your hair and your nails done, they are not going to be there if the bottom falls out. You understand? The people who you go to get to the gas station to put gas in your car, if the bottom falls out of this place, they are not going to be there. The people who you depend on for health care and for medical care and you depend on to, the government that you depend on to help with assistance, the bottom falls out of this place, they are not going to be there. You know what I'm saying? The utility services that you depend on to keep your water running and to keep you warm when it's cold outside and to keep the house cool when it's hot outside. If the bottom falls out of this place, they are not going to be there. And so I'm thankful for the experience of COVID-19 because it sort of reinstilled a sense of resilience in the black and brown community. But since we've come out of COVID, we've went right back to being in a position and in a place where we are at odds with one another in our communities. You look across the many of the cities in this country, the death rates and the murder rates and the violent crime rates have shot up since COVID-19. When at the beginning of the pandemic, things had quieted down. It was, you know what I'm saying, sort of everybody had kind of buckled down and, didn't really understand the seriousness of the situation. But now that we're coming out of that COVID and there's a push to try and get us back to normalcy, we're seeing the ramifications of what that normalcy was for our community. And it's us being pitted against one another. But now we're living in the times where COVID-19 is not going to be an excuse for why America isn't running properly. COVID-19 is not going to be an excuse for why things have slowly grounded to a halt. And we're seeing it taking place on many different fronts, but nobody is really putting the pieces together. So that's what we're going to do with this show today and going forward. We're going to start taking some of these current events and things that's going on in the media and take them from being isolated incidents that are over here and over there and really bringing them together to show you how all these things that are taking place are being done by a higher power so that you will wake up and realize just how dire the straits are that we are in. So the first thing we're going to do, man, tonight we're going to talk about the BRICS um uh compact agreement compact agreement, right? So for those of you who may not know, and it's possible for you to not be privy to this because hell, why would you? Who's talking about what's going on internationally and with in particularly with the American economy? Who is coming to the so-called black and brown community and warning us about these international events that are taking place that is um causing us to have to be on alert. Nobody is really talking to so-called black and brown people because we are not one of the nations that internationally these other groups of nations care about brokering any deals with, right? So here's what you see right here is you see what is, let's see, let me get myself in this small little corner. I can't be in that little corner. Hold up. Bear with me. Here we go. Boom. There we go. So you see right here, this is what the BRICS is. The BRICS was an agreement that was made between five nations, I want to say roughly over a year ago. And BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. No, and Sudan. Is it Sudan or is it Saudi Arabia? I'm tripping. Hold up. South Africa. That's who it is. You understand? So a couple years ago, these seven nations came together and said, for our posterity, for the us to be able to endure for the foreseeable future, let's broker a deal that will enable us to, no matter what Western sanctions, no matter what America or Britain or France or Germany or NATO, the NATO forces decide to do, we are going to form a brotherhood, an alliance. We're going to depend on one another. We're going to rely on one another, and we are going to, keep each other afloat. And when this BRICS nations first started, this summit first started a couple years ago, I'm pretty sure the Western powers that be probably shrugged it off or looked at it like it was nothing. Hell, we got NATO, we got all of the Western powers, we got America, we got Britain, we got Israel, we got France and Germany. Surely, who gives a damn what Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America is doing, right? I mean, South Africa is doing. But in the wake of COVID-19 and in the wake of what happened to the international, uh, commerce internationally, this BRIC summit has started to pick up steam and has now taken a position where they have the ability to overthrow the Western stranglehold on the world's economy because of their ability to formulate their own currency. So it was announced a few weeks ago that these BRIC nations had decided that they were going to develop their own currency, and that this currency was going to be backed by a gold standard, and that this currency would supersede the US dollar. And if this currency is going to supersede the US dollar, then this currency is also going to supersede what? It's going to supersede the euro and the yen and all these other different forms of currency that are out there. As of the past 60 years, all major commercial trade internationally has been done using the US dollar. When it comes to purchasing oil, natural resources, earth metals and elements, the US dollar was the standard currency that all international markets dealt in. But this new BRICS currency is going to take the place of the dollar. So what does that mean if this new BRICS currency takes the place of the US dollar? That means that all the oil that Saudi Arabia sells, all the oil that's being sold in the Middle East is no longer going to be dealt in dollars. All of that oil is now going to be dealt in this new BRICS currency. And with all the debt that we've constantly been hearing about here in America, all the day, all day, every day, all the time, about how much the debt ceiling has risen, America is in no position to leverage the US dollar against any kind of currency. And so this BRICS nations, like I said, started out as a summit a couple years ago, seemed maybe a small thing to the Western powers that be, because when you think of, world military, sure, Russia and China are formidable, but who the hell cares about the Brazilian army? Nobody, you never hear anything about the Brazilian army. They're not invading nobody or, defeating any incursions. The Indian army, all you know about India is that they be whooping the hell out of them Pakistanis. But who the hell are the Pakistanis to the Indians? What does that matter? As long as they stay on their little peninsula over there in the Indian Ocean, who cares what's going on over there in South of Africa? Forget about it. South Africa still hasn't even really recovered from apartheid. They're not a major military power on the earth. But these BRIC nations coming together, what these countries were able to do, were able to establish on every continent on the planet a stronghold for them to be able to conduct business and conduct commerce. And these five nations are really the largest resource, that have the largest abundance of resources on all the continents that they occupy. The resources coming out of Brazil, forget about it. Brazil is one of the most natural resource abundant nations on the planet. You know what I'm saying? Brazil is where the Amazon rainforest is unspeakable untapped resources that are in that country of Brazil. Russia, very vast, large landmass in the western part of Asia. India, forget about it. All the people in India, is billions of people in India. I don't know how much natural resources they're providing, but you got a billion people. There's a lot you can get done. Same with China. You know what I'm saying? And also, particularly with Russia, India, and China, these are nations where the people are fully locked in with the government. Like the culture of these nations and the way that they live and the way that they conduct business and the way that their society is structured There is no rebellions. There is no revolutions. There is no, Arab Spring taking place in these countries. These are all countries that are, formidable in their resolve to stand on their nationalism. So that particularly makes them a problem for America. But again, starting out, you might have looked at it like, oh, this BRICS thing ain't nothing. Maybe it's something that'll pass. But now news has hit yesterday, or news hit yesterday that there are 19 more countries that have expressed interest in joining the BRICS group. So now it's not just these five little countries who nobody has to worry about. It's not just these five little nations that NATO and the Western powers doesn't need to bat an eye at. 19 other nations have seen what they've done and they said, we want to come on board. So we're going to go ahead and read some of this article. All right. It says Cape Town, 19 countries express an interest in joining the BRICS group of nations as it prepares to hold an annual summit in South Africa. The emerging markets bloc of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa will meet in Cape Town on June 2nd through the 3rd to discuss its enlargement. Anil Sukai, South Africa's ambassador to the group, said in an interview in the city on Monday. What will be discussed is the expansion of BRICS and the modalities of how this will happen. 13 countries have formally asked to join, and another 6 have asked informally. We are getting applications to join every day. China initiated the conversation about expansion when it was BRICS chair last year, as the world's second biggest economy tries to build diplomatic clout to counter the dominance of developed countries in the United Nations. The proposed enlargement triggered concern among other members that their influence will be diluted, especially if Beijing's close allies are admitted. China's gross domestic product is more than twice the size of all 4 other BRICS members combined. So China is the big dog in this deal. China is the big dog in this BRICS conglomerate of nations trying to position themselves to gain even more power. But let's continue to read. The foreign ministers from the 5 member states have all confirmed they'll attend the discussions in June. In addition to its membership, they will also discuss hotspots, including Sudan, where a ceasefire appeared to take hold on Tuesday after 10 days of conflict. Since its formation as the BRIC in 2006, the group has only added one member, South Africa, in 2010. So this is longer than a couple years ago. I didn't hear about BRIC till a couple years ago, but apparently they've been running since 2006. And again, this was a deal that was brokered in the hopes that regardless of how bad things got and how far dissolved diplomatic relations got between the Western countries and these other nations, that they would be able to band together and hold one another down in dealing with a worst case scenario when it came to having to stand up against America. But let's go ahead and continue. It says Saudi Arabia and Iran are among the countries who formally asked to join. Now, if Saudi Arabia and Iran, two of the greatest oil producing nations on the earth, join this BRICS alliance, then that means that the US dollar, being the standard currency for all trade in oil and in crude oil resources on the planet, is going to shift. And that shift is going to block out America. That shift is going to block out the Western powers. It's going to block out the NATO nations. And now, who has the power? Now, who has the control? Now, who's in the driver's seat? I'm going to keep reading. Other countries that have expressed interest in joining include Argentina, the United Arab Emirates, Algeria, Egypt, Bahrain, and Indonesia, along with 2 nations from East Africa and one from West Africa, which he didn't identify. So these are nations that are predominantly from that Middle East area, which means what? These are all oil producing nations. These are all nations that the West depends on oil and gas and natural resources. And if all together to join China, to join Russia, join in this BRICS alliance, which um doesn't lend any credence to these Western powers and their economies, then how tight are things going to get economically here in America? How tight are things going to get economically down in the Caribbean? How tight are things going to get economically over there in Western Europe? COVID-19 was the beginning of the crumbling of these Western economies. And if honestly, if it wasn't for COVID-19, the recession that we're experiencing here in America, we would have experienced it a lot sooner. But because of COVID-19, they were able to have an excuse or a reason for why the economy had slowly grinded to a halt. Then Biden went and took all of that money that he just generated out of nowhere and gave everybody checks, you know what I'm saying, that stimulated quote unquote the economy. But really that was just another last ditch effort of these Western bankers to rob and steal everybody's money. For all those of you out there, when COVID-19 hit and everybody was getting those stimulus checks, wasn't it kind of odd how cryptocurrency came out of nowhere and suddenly blew up and became a big thing? And then once all of that stimulus money dried up, people started going back to work and getting back to their normal lives. You don't hear anybody talking about mining for crypto anymore, do you? Have you been paying attention to the news? Do you know what happened with the goddamn FTX and all those and Bitcoin and all those other uh cryptocurrency apps and banks that was popping during the pandemic? They all went away. All that money that people would receive from the government, all that money that was, artificially pumped into the economy was all robbed and stolen from so many people in the goddamn Ponzi scheme. And it's going to be about 10, 12 years before you hear you see the documentary or read the story about the great crypto hoax. When I thank the Most High for the ISUPK and the Commander General Yohana, General Muhammad tried to warn brother. He told him, listen, you go ahead and play with that funny monopoly money if you want to. Y'all went out there and gambled and played with that funny monopoly money. And here you are, April 2023, filing taxes, and that money's gone. You understand? These BRICS nations, they see the writing on the wall. And understand this new BRICS economy, this new BRICS currency, this ain't going to be no funny money. This isn't going to be, some digital currency that's not tangible. This money is going to be backed by gold, which means this money is going to have actual real value. A lot of you are so out of the loop when it comes to the Federal Reserve, now what's it called? Fractional reserve banking, which is the system that this Western economy runs on. It's so ridiculous and silly how this money that we're dealing with is just completely made up out of nowhere. And these numbers that appear in these banking systems are completely fabricated. When the bottom falls out of this place, it is going to be a rough day for a lot of people. And in that time, there's not going to be there's going to be no one to blame but your own gullibility. It's not like nobody's telling you the truth. It's not like anybody's warning you. Here in the ISUPK, we've been on the streets since 1969 trying to warn our people about trusting in your oppressor, by depending on these people who have shown you throughout time immemorial that they have nothing in terms of, any type of love or care for you. They've shown it to you time and time again, but continually we are led to trust and believe in these people. And what has it gotten us? If you haven't woken up yet, now is the time. America is falling. This Western civilization, as you've known it, as we've grown up in it, as we've been programmed to believe that it is the greatest, it is falling apart. And it should fall apart. It needs to fall apart. As it falls, what are we going to do? What we have to do is go back to what caused us to thrive and prosper before the time that we were introduced to these devils. You understand? And that is what it is that we teach and we profess and we stand on here at Angry Black Man Media and in the ISUPK under Commanding General Yohana. All right, so that was the BRICS. The economy is falling. These nations are coming together. They see the writing on the wall. They know that the time for America's dominating and ruling is at an end. And because the time of America's dominating and ruling is at an end, these folks are positioning themselves to be, the next thing smoking. Well, what are you going to do, black man, Hispanic man? You notice them BRICS didn't say the delegation of Negroes. There was no trip to the, they didn't broker any deals with the Hispanic delegation. We are completely left out of the loop. We're not a part of the Western powers or NATO, and we're not considered by this new BRICS conglomerate of nations. That's because we all we got. And in acknowledging and accepting that we all we got, guess what? We're gonna have to band together. There is a blueprint, black man. There is a plan going forward. If you want to understand what that blueprint is, if you want to know what that path going forward is, then you tap in with the ISUPK. You tap in with Angry Black Man Media. Hit me on the DMs. Hit me in the inbox and say, Black man, I want to be down with the program. What we gonna do going forward, man? I see what you said about the BRICS. What we gonna do next? Hit me up. I'll point you in the right direction. Everybody understands. Next thing I want to talk about is this Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is a famous. What's the word? He's a famous conservative talk show host. For Fox News. Tucker Carlson, for many years running, has had the number one show on Fox News nightly. He was um their prime time host, talking about all the current events and all the things that's pertaining to uh the cares and the fears of the conservative people in this nation. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the conservative people in this nation are predominantly a particular demographic. Tucker Carlson has been their voice for quite some time. Tucker Carlson speaks about the immoralities in this current society that we're in. He gives a large voice to rejecting a lot of the propaganda and the indoctrination that's being pushed in this country concerning the sexuality, concerning so-called gender equality or the gender spectrum. He speaks a lot about he speaks a lot about a lot of stuff. And for a lot of people, Tucker Carlson is their voice in the media. Well, I taught a class last week about the um, inequalities that exist in this judicial system here in America. There was a court case that was filed by a company called Dominion against Fox News for defamation of character. Dominion is the company that's in charge of the voting machines that was used in the last election that occurred in 2020. And Fox News, because Donald Trump had lost the election, went on a smear campaign against Dominion, saying that Dominion had rigged the election for the Democrats to win. And for many years, that's what led to the January 6th insurrection. That's what led to all of this Donald Trump being indicted now, is that there was a campaign that was supported and funded and backed by Donald Trump to make sure that the word was out there that you can't trust the elections in America, and it's because of this company named Dominion. Well, Dominion, because of all the lies and the slander and the words being spoken by Fox News, their business suffered. They were, on the shelf to not ever be able to do business as a voting booth company ever again, because one of the largest media outlets in the country is constantly smearing them every night on their programming. So Dominion filed a lawsuit. Well, last week, Fox News settled out of court for $757 million with Dominion. Fox News settled for $757 million so that they would not have to go to court to face the claims that Dominion levied against them of defamation of character. And in the discovery portion of the lawsuit that Dominion brought against Fox News, emails and text messages and correspondence was being uncovered between Fox News's biggest on-air personalities and their producers and their editors and the people who work behind the scenes about the lies that they were spreading concerning the last election and concerning this company called Dominion. So part of those text messages and emails and correspondence that had been released to the public, Tucker Carlson was shown to be speaking his mind about a lot of things that he didn't agree with. A lot of that was Donald Trump and his policies and his procedures and the way that they were proceeding and refusing to give up on the election, refusing to acknowledge defeat. Tucker Carlson had some real choice words for Donald Trump and his editors and producers during that time period. And so those things came out in the discovery phase of the court case. Fox News wasn't going to deal with the public shame of having it be found out by the nation at large just how crooked and full of lies and propaganda that this media machine in this country is. So he settled out of court for $757 million. Then on the back of that settlement, they made an announcement yesterday. Fox News did, that they were letting Tucker Carlson go. Tucker Carlson was no longer a part of the Fox News media team. His show was no longer going to air on Fox News, and effective immediately, they had agreed to part ways. And so what does that mean for media in this country, and really what's going on behind the scenes that made this man who was so popular and made so much money for Fox News so expendable in that moment? I'm gonna break it to y'all. I'm gonna break it down to y'all right now. You understand? Now, we give a second, pull this video up. I'm gonna try to pull up a video for y'all of Tucker Carlson speaking about being let go from Fox News. Matter of fact, you know what? Let's see something. Okay, I don't want to play them. I don't want to play anything from these other major outlets. Let me see something. Hold up. I'll play this right here. Let's play this right here. And as I go into this story about Tucker Carlson, I'm going to take y'all back in time to the last time Fox News had a major shakeup in their newsroom and were forced to part ways with one of their most popular on-air personalities. And I know what's going on with Fox News and Tucker Carlson right now. Media is not going to tell you, spin on why they're getting rid of Tucker Carlson. But then I'm gonna go into what really happened and what really transpired and why they really had to let Tucker Carlson go. And this is one of these situations where Fox News didn't have a choice. Even if Fox News wanted to keep Tucker Carlson, they would not have been able to. And we're gonna go ahead and get into it right now. And really, this Tucker Carlson situation is a microcosm of what's really taking place in America, and it's a microcosm of what's really in the mind and in the hearts and in the spirits of your oppressor who rules in this place. I'm gonna go ahead and play this video.
Tucker Carlson and Fox News have agreed to part ways. While the reasons why are still unknown, this comes a week after Fox agreed to pay $787 million to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by Dominion Voting Systems, a case that was about misinformation in the 2020 election. Dominion had claimed that Fox repeatedly aired allegations that its voting systems were rigged against former President Donald Trump in that race, while knowing that that was untrue. Tucker Carlson himself had texts used as evidence in that case. So now that he's off the air, it raises questions about what it means for Fox and for its reporting around the 2024 election. Tucker Carlson tonight averaged 3.3 million viewers in 2022 and was the second most watched show in cable news. He was seen as a highly influential conservative commentator with a highly engaged audience, and some GOP strategists have actually floated him as a potential Republican seeker of election himself. He has previously said that he isn't endorsing anyone in the 2024 Republican presidential primary, and in an interview in July said he wasn't running himself, saying, "I'm not running, I'm a talk show host." Well, now that he is out of that job, could things change?
All right, so as you see right there, the news report gave you, the particulars on Tucker Carlson and the recent uh trouble that Fox News ran into, with that voting case. I lowballed the settlement number. The settlement number was $787 million. Not 757, which is what I've been saying. But here's what you have to say to yourself, right? What was Fox News not willing to face in court that they settled for $787 million? Like that is such a huge win for Dominion voting systems. Now I don't know how much business they doing in the country and how many voting machines they got to get out there and how vast their reach in the country was with these voting booths. But I know it wasn't $787 million worth. The best thing that could have ever happened to Dominion voting systems was Fox News to spread lies about their machines being rigged and how their election was stolen. You know what I'm saying? Even the lawyer in the Dominion voting booth case, the lawyer after the settlement said that this case was a win for accountability. That it didn't matter that we didn't go to court, didn't matter that the truth didn't come out. The fact that Fox settled for $787 million is accountability enough, which I believe sends an evil message concerning the US court system in that if you do evil and do wrong, as long as you got money to pay for it, then you don't have to actually do anything to make up for the wrong that you did. And I believe that is why Tucker Carlson left Fox News. Tucker Carlson left Fox News not because Tucker Carlson couldn't stay on the air, not because Tucker Carlson wasn't going to be able to bounce back. Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News because Tucker Carlson refused to apologize. You understand? In the emails that came out during the discovery phase of this Dominion versus uh the Dominion voting booth scandal, Tucker Carlson has sent emails to his producers and to his editors at Fox News expressing his displeasure and dissatisfaction with Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson was very vocal about how he didn't like how they were proceeding with the lies and with the spreading of the misinformation. He was one of the major proponents against keeping up this farce and this hoax, lying to people about the election being stolen. And I can almost guarantee you that part of this Dominion settlement was that somebody had to get on the air and apologize and say sorry for what had been done to Dominion. And knowing the spirit that is in these conservatives and in men like Tucker Carlson who don't apologize for anything. Now, here's one thing I will say about Tucker Carlson and the way he presents himself on television. He presents himself as somebody who's well thought out and fully understands all angles of the argument that he's having, and he is 10 toes down in his position. Tucker Carlson has done interviews, in my opinion, where he's really made a lot of people look stupid, particularly in talking about the gender, these gender normative issues in the country, talking about these various, what he would call immoralities. I'm trying to be politically correct. Tucker Carlson is a great voice against evil in this society right now. And anybody who's a proponent of the evil, he knows how to cut them. You know what I'm saying? He catch them up in their tracks, he catch them up in their words and really make them look stupid. He's one of those guys, one of those oppressors who's real just smug about, yeah, I know what I'm talking about, and I know I'm right. And if you're speaking on the side of wrong, I look down on you because you're immoral and you're baseless and you don't have any, you don't have any morality to you. He one of them type of, old proud Bible belt type of oppressors. But you can respect that in that this is a man who has some integrity. This is a man who got some honor. This is a man who's, got a little bit of dignity to him, regardless of how much he's lying for a check in the media. He not finna get up there and apologize for something that he did when he told his producers and editors we shouldn't be doing this. And so because he wouldn't apologize, Fox News had to get him up out of there. But here's the thing. Tucker Carlson gonna be all right because Tucker Carlson gonna leave Fox News and he gonna take all them people who love him with him. And they're gonna raise somebody else up in that place. But Tucker Carlson is gonna be all right. Tucker Carlson being outed at Fox News reminded me of another Fox News anchor who was very popular, who was very prevalent at Fox News, who they had to let go at one time because, again, in the spirit of these oppressors, they are proud. And if they are locked into a position, they know they right about something, nobody's going to be able to back them down. To these men, their honor and their integrity means a lot to them, even if they're wrong, even if they're on the side of evil, even if they are oppressors and they are part of a country that was built on the backs of slaves and rapists and murderers and thieves, they're going to stand on, hey, well, we won. Hey, you can't be, I never had any slaves. You can't be mad at us because we're the victors. So they're very proud, proud, evil, particular type of devils. But there is an honor in being true to who they are. You understand? Tucker Carlson being outed at Fox News reminded me a lot of a man named Glenn Beck. Some of you may not know Glenn Beck, but Glenn Beck was the major primetime anchor at Fox News before Tucker Carlson. And this cat he was at Fox News when I was a child. When I was, not child, but when I was a young man, teenage years, still in high school, coming out of high school. Glenn Beck used to have the afternoon programming on Fox News. And Glenn Beck was one of these conservative, patriot, anti-big government guys who used to just speak his mind. Also, Glenn Beck was a cat that was, he was learned. He had some knowledge, had some understanding. Well, right before they kicked Glenn Beck off the air, Glenn Beck got to telling the truth about things that he had been learning. And for those of us that was in the truth, that had been teaching on the streets, we felt like this cat he listening to what we be breaking out, watching our lectures and our breakdowns, and he taking some of the stuff we've been saying and he put it on his show on TV. So let's go ahead and get into this little snippet of one of the Glenn Beck's last programs that he ran on Fox News about the true identity of the Native American Indians. Now, keep in mind, y'all, this is on Fox News in the afternoon, 4:30 in the afternoon on the East Coast, primetime television. This is what he broke down.
Egyptians. Let me show you one more connection. In 1860, David Wyrick, he's a guy who surveyed the Newark earthworks. He was digging into a mound near those earthworks, and he found a wooden coffin made of oak. They opened up the coffin and found a skeleton of a man holding a little box. It was about 8.10 inches in size. The box had been cemented shut here. This, by the way, is sitting in Ohio. Well, he opened up the box and he found a little man inside, a little black stone. They took it to scholars and they looked at it. The man seems to be carrying something, and there's writing here at first they couldn't recognize. The writing is, they thought in 1860, some sort of Hebrew. Well, finally, about 20 years later, they found some rabbis living in the area, and the rabbis looked at that and they could read it. They said it was an old kind of block Hebrew, and it was a rendition of the Ten Commandments. Now, this is another piece. Block Hebrew, they said they'd never seen anything like it. Mainstream archaeologists at the time called this a hoax. But then in 1900, or just about after 1900, in Israel, they found the same block-style Hebrew writing. Mainstream archaeologists still dismiss the findings. They found it in Israel, and they found it in Ohio. But there was another stone that they found that they couldn't argue. This is the Bat Creek stone. It was found during the course of an official Smithsonian evacuation. The Smithsonian didn't understand the meaning of the writing on the stone. They thought it was Cherokee, since it came from Cherokee country. They didn't realize that it's actually Hebrew. They had published this originally upside down. They threw it in a box at the bottom of the Smithsonian, put it in the basement. Many years later, a scholar took it out of the box, looked at it, and went, oh my gosh, it's upside down. It's Phoenician, ancient Hebrew. So what's going on here? What is that about? Where is that history? I'll show you in a few minutes, and we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to show you some more things that the Smithsonian, science, government, commerce colluded to erase. By the way, I want to thank the directors of the documentary Lost Civilizations of North America for bringing these stories to my attention. I was blown away. To find more, visit the website, lostcivilizationdvd.com. Here's the thing we should be asking ourselves. I don't know the story of these. Do you know that? Did you know that? Do you live in Ohio and did you know that? Why not? Were the American Indians wronged? Yes. Yes. And that's what we focus on in America, is we were bad to the American. Forget about it. It's in the past. The question should be the ones that the founders asked. Who are they? What knowledge do they have? Can you imagine the difference we would have now if we would put our differences aside and put our past in the past and concentrate on today and say, let's learn from each other. What do you have? What is that? What is that? When we come back, I'm going to be joined by Peter Lilback, who is, I've told you before, is one of my favorite authors. He's going to talk to me a little bit about the founders here. And I'm also going to show you some documents that show how that history has been erased. Next.
Listen, Glenn Beck was right around the corner from inviting the ISUPK on his show to tell America the truth about the identity of the Native American Indians and that they belong to the lost 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. That is what that entire presentation was about. If you go find Lost Civilizations of North America, it is an entire documentary about the identity of the North American Indians and them being the lost 12, them being of the lost 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. I'm talking about a week, 2 weeks after this aired, Glenn Beck was off the air. Glenn Beck was sitting on Fox and giving his goodbye speech because his show was being taken off the air. This was a man who was searching for the truth. Not searching for the truth, but had encountered a little bit of truth. And even asking the questions that he was asking on the air was too much for the powers that be to even chance that he get any answers. And they got Glenn Beck off the air. And Glenn Beck was the number one financial and viewership producing talent at Fox News. But regardless of how much money you're generating, regardless of how big of a voice you have, guess what? These people in this country, these powers that be, are going to do whatever they can to stop the truth from coming out. Now, Tucker Carlson wasn't on the same tip that Glenn Beck was on, but Tucker Carlson wasn't finna apologize. And because Tucker Carlson wasn't finna apologize, they had to get him up out of there. So what you're seeing is that here's what you're going to see. For years now, there's been a vacuum in terms of trustful media and information that is available, to the masses. I remember, man, back there used to be a time in the internet where you could search you could put in a phrase and all types of links and all types of things would come up. But we're living in a very heavily censored society right now. There's a lot of stuff that used to be readily available on the internet that you're just not going to be able to find no more. You know what I'm saying? Because YouTube and Google and all of these different companies are actively blocking certain information from being accessible. Hell, they talk what they want about Alex Jones. But Alex Jones, you used to be able to just go watch Alex Jones. You type Alex Jones in on YouTube, nothing gonna come up. You type Alex Jones in on Google, nothing gonna come up. You damn near gotta go on the dark web to find Alex Jones to go watch his show. Even if what he's saying is a lot of BS, he still got a perspective. Some people want to tune into it. Now, not in America. They blocking it. You're not gonna be able to find that. Not gonna be able to raise those questions or believe what he's saying. But I thought we lived in a free country. You know what I'm saying? Glenn Beck was one of them cats. Started to speak his mind, wouldn't be quieted, wouldn't be shut up. So they had to get him off the air. But guess what? You go to glennbeck.com, he got a following. Glenn Beck is doing good. Glenn Beck is getting money, he rich, and he's still a voice for conservatives underground. That's all that's going to happen to Tucker Carlson. But Tucker Carlson was not about to apologize for Donald Trump. He wasn't going to take low. He wasn't going to eat crow. He wasn't going to be belittled or demonized or made to look a fool because of his stance that he took for Donald Trump in just doing his job. Like I said, those emails and those text messages, those correspondence showed that Tucker Carlson was fed up with the whole Donald Trump BS. And for them to settle out of court was one thing, but then to have him come on the air and apologize, that was just too much for him. And that's why he's no longer going to be on Fox News. So the last thing I want to talk about now, again, Tucker Carlson leaving Fox News is going to further not divide the nation, but it's another sign that there is something taking place in the media that people should be uncomfortable with. And it's all a part of the civil unrest that exists in this country. Fox News had to make that settlement out of court because it was in part them acknowledging that they've been lying. They've been telling people things that were not true. I'm anxious to see what Tucker Carlson is going to say when he gets his own platform. How much is he going to lean on Donald Trump and the whole BS of the voting issue? And I mean, how honest is he going to be? Who knows? And then what's going to be the response of all of these conservative patriot people who've been following him and listening to him for so many years? What's going to happen to Fox News now? Their credibility going to go down? People going to stop listening to what they have to say? Well, we know the answer to that is hell no. They love them some Fox News. They love them some conservatism. They love them some Donald Trump. And that's going to continue the civil unrest that exists in this nation. And you got civil unrest and you got the economy falling apart. These other nations are gathering together to put themselves in positions to overthrow America. And on top of all of that, the Most High is plaguing America with natural disasters. You understand? Now, just not even 6 months ago, we have been hearing about all of the issues with the drought going on in the western part of the country. For many years, there was a drought on the west coast of the country that had led to a lot of rivers and a lot of lakes and a lot of, watersheds drying up to the point that entire, you know, um, cities and civilizations were at threat of no longer existing because of their inability to be able to access water. And I know many areas of Arizona, many areas of Utah, many areas of California near the deserts, many areas up there in the Pacific Northwest. There was such a severe drought for many years that there was a lot of restrictions being placed on the usage of water and things of that sort. Well, after being plagued with a drought for many, many years on that West Coast, in the past 2-3 months, we've seen a ridiculously unnatural amount of water being doused on the West Coast. And there's something that meteorologists refer to as the atmospheric river that has been flowing over the Pacific Ocean up there in the atmosphere that has been leading to all of the storms and the monsoons and the blizzards that have been taking place in the western part of the country. Well, it's gotten so bad now that after so many years of drought, so much water has fallen on that western part of the country that in many areas they are experiencing severe flooding. Severe floods and mudslides and landslides and entire, communities and areas being wiped out because of all of this water reforming the landscape. And I wanted to stop to just show the power of the Most High in being able to, in an instant, just wipe out everything that man, you know, put his hands forward to do. And here's what a lot of us don't understand about that part of the country. Much of what we see in the western part of the country today is man-made. A lot of that landscape, a lot of those communities, you look at Utah, Salt Lake City, you look at Arizona, you look at Phoenix, and you look in Tempe, and you look at Santa Fe, New Mexico. Give me some more. Give me Las Vegas, Nevada. A lot of the landscape of the Western Hemisphere has been terraformed by the hands of man. I'm gonna play a video here shortly that goes into a little bit of the history of just how much the landscape of that western part of the country has been changed in the short years that our oppressor has been here. But what we see taking place right now with all of these storms and with all of this flooding is largely natural. You understand? There's certain things that man can do, but nothing man can do can stand against the power of the Most High. And the power of the Most High to cause the earth to do what he deemed is necessary for it to do can't be stopped by man. So right now, there's extreme flooding and extreme disaster that is befalling the people of Utah right now. And what's taking place in Utah with all of the mass flooding and with all of the landslides And with all of these whole communities being wiped out, is really just natural for that part of the world. That part of the world is never supposed to have been developed the way that it was developed. A lot of the things that are in the way, a lot of the houses and the communities that have been built and propped up in that part of the country never should have been there. If man got out of the way and allowed the Most High to do what he does, the western part of the country could look a lot like the eastern part of the country. You understand? There's mountains and valleys and different rivers that flow and tributaries in the eastern part of the country. Largely have been untouched by man. So the landscape in the East Coast is conducive to farming and things growing and different stuff like that. Well, a lot of the drought and the desert that exists in the western part of the country is due to man-made man-made interruptions in the landscape. But regardless of what man does, the Most High has a way of auto-correcting things. That desert and that dryness that exists in the western part of the country shouldn't be that way. And what's happening with all of this flooding is the Most High is just really returning some of that land to its original state. And in a lot of them places where they have houses and when they have communities, it should be a river flowing. It should be a lake that's about 500 feet deep. But because our oppressor is the devil, he's done so much changing to the land that when God moves on this place, it is a plague on them for standing in the way of the Most High's power and might. So let me go ahead and pull this video up for y'all real quick. This is going to show some of the recent flooding that they've been experiencing in Utah. Then once we see this news clip, I'm going to go and show you a tape from a documentary that I found that went into a lot of history concerning the landscape of the western part of America and what it used to be before our oppressor decided that he wanted to try and gobble up all the resources for himself.
Right now, we're just trying to control the water as best we can.
A race against Mother Nature.
Just barricading off these driveways.
As a rush of water comes running down the street in the Orchard Ridge community in Kaysville.
It's just truck after truck after truck with bags.
And right there in the middle of it all,
Great neighbors in the area coming out to
is
help.
Josh Belknap, the Kaysville Public Works Director. The man in charge of this flooding operation, and the man also having to figure out what went wrong.
Kind of the initial reports indicate that we've got a storm drain that got plugged overnight. We've been watching this closely almost on a daily basis and have seen good continual function here. But something last night happened. We don't know exactly what. We don't know exactly where.
For Ivory Homes, the water caused tens of millions of dollars worth of damage to their houses. Many of these homes just weeks away from being finished.
It's just too much water in the wrong places, and it starts right here.
Michael Parker is Ivory Homes' Vice President of Strategy. He says this all had to do with the engineering of the drainage system before they started building.
We don't feel like we're in a position of fault currently, and that something happened where debris has come into our system and caused a huge failure. I'm confident in our guys and the infrastructure they put in hundreds of neighborhoods across the state, and we got to work with some homeowners in the city because of someone not seeing ahead.
But Belknap says it's way too early to start pointing fingers.
And I think everybody's natural tendency is to, but I don't even think we're at the point where we could even, beyond a best guess, start to, what was it, who done it.
Thanks for watching.
So that was a news report about all the flooding that's taking place over there in Utah. And why is there so much flooding taking place in Utah? There's so much flooding taking place in Utah because they experienced record snowfall a couple weeks ago. Same time that Los Angeles and California was getting hit with these massive storms that was bringing feet and feet of rain in the matter of hours. Over there in Utah, because they're sitting on the mountains, they were getting blasted with feet and feet and feet of snow. So in a very short period of time, Utah got blasted with about, 6 feet of snow, 7 feet of snow, some ridiculous amount of snow in a short time hit Utah. And what happened is right after the snow hit, the warm weather came. The springtime arrived. And as spring arrived in Utah, right after all of that snow, the snow began to melt. And as the snow began to melt, the snow did what all water does, which is formed little streams, little rivers, pouring into little lakes. Now, if this landscape was what it's supposed to be, then all of this water would have been able to freely flow and freely form and create a river or a stream and flow until it reached a larger body of water. But because these people came and they built houses and they built these communities, well, the water just ran right through their neighborhood. And as the water ran through their neighborhood, it caused the ground to move and it caused houses to slide, and entire communities were swallowed up in the ground because they never were supposed to be there in the first place. Now, why do I say they were never supposed to be there in the first place? Well, let's just go and take a look at the original landscape of much of what the Western coast was like prior to these people bringing their influence. I'm going to play a clip from this video here just to show you how much all of this that's taking place is right and proper, and it is the power of the Most High that is doing it, because there are unspeakable evils and crimes that have been committed in this earth that many of us will never know about. But the Most High does know about it, and that is why he's bringing his judgment and his vengeance down on these people.
Today, California has over 1,500 dams. And were any of these dams built before 1600? What would the land look like if these dams didn't exist? One might find it quite interesting, the consistency of these supposedly inaccurate maps of the mythical island of California. One point mentioned by Hunsaker that should be referred back to is when he stated that there has been evidence and record of rivers changing course throughout the history of these arc storms.
It changed the course of rivers.
On the maps of the island of California, the mainland on the east coast of the Red Sea Divide, I would like to draw special attention to. There appears to be a river descending from the Great Salt Lake approximately into the sea. On these maps, the river is labeled Rio del Norte. The suspicious thing about this mysterious river is that it appears on nearly every map that depicts California as an island. But if we were to check the map today, this river does not exist. The river named Rio del Norte is nowhere to be found. Instead, what do we find in its place? Some call it the Arrowhead Trail, while others call it Interstate 15. This is the most direct route from Las Vegas to Salt Lake City. The path of the Rio del Norte begins at roughly some point in Arizona and continues on the same meridian as the Salton Sea, which is the second largest saltwater body in America, just behind the Great Salt Lake. One peculiar tidbit about the Salton Sea is that it is the extreme opposite of the Great Salt Lake. While the Great Salt Sea of Utah sits at 4,000 feet above sea level, the Salton Sea sits under 200 feet below sea level. Would it be so hard to believe that this area had once been completely submerged? 200 years ago, the Salton Sea didn't even exist. Contrastly, 200 years ago, Tulare Lake was the largest lake in California and the largest lake in America west of the Mississippi. Now it doesn't exist. The loss and formation of these two large bodies of water are a result of humans' attempt to control Mother Nature.
Welcome to the Salton Sea.
The
Salton Sea is located about 60 miles south of Palm Springs along the Highway 111 corridor and the Highway 86 corridor in Riverside and Imperial County. The sea is approximately 35 miles long by about 15 miles wide. There are 3 inlets to the Salton Sea. We have the Alamo River to the south as well as the New River, and then to the north is the Whitewater River. And there are some intermittent drainages throughout the shoreline that run during the flood seasons in the spring and in the winter. Most of the water that enters in here, well, all of the water in here stays. The only way that it leaves the Salton Sea is by way of evaporation, which leaves behind quite a bit of salt. Currently, the Salton Sea is approximately 50% saltier than the Pacific Ocean. Since the 1930s, Congress has designated this landmass out here as an agricultural sump, which means that all the water coming off of the agricultural fields come into this body of water. How did the sea form? Isn't this a man-made lake? Well, yes and no. No, in that the basin has been here for a very long time, geologically speaking. This basin even predates the arrival of the San Andreas Fault. However, the current Salton Sea that we have today was basically created by an accident of man. Some gentlemen who were very, very good at building canals through rock, they had been very successful in Australia in bringing water to dry regions, were hired by local pioneers and the U.S. government, as a matter of fact, to come down and bring water in from the Colorado River all the way into the Imperial Valley. And what they did was they cut a drainage canal from the Colorado River directly through some very, very soft soils into the Imperial Valley and connected that up with smaller canals. So this drainage gets blocked up and people are screaming because we have massive farms down here. They're getting ready to plant. Some of them are getting ready to harvest. The farmers, the pioneers need water. Everything is drying up. So these gentlemen needed to make their money and keep their livelihood. They snuck down into Mexico without telling anybody, and they cut another canal lower down on the Colorado River. And they brought it in again to soft soils. And they connected up with their old canal drainage, and water began to flow. Well, the Colorado River didn't appreciate that, and it had another major flood. And what it did in that second flood was it connected the first canal with the second canal, and everything in between came downstream. And this behind me is the downstream. And so for approximately 16 months, the Colorado River stopped flowing all the way to the Gulf of California and basically put all its might into coming into this basin behind me, the Salton Sink, creating the modern Salton Sea.
At some point in the early 1900s, farmers moved in and began diverting water out of Tulare Lake. Within a half a century, the lake was completely drained. Once the largest freshwater lake in the West, was transformed into a patch of earth.
It was once one of the largest Indian tribes in all of North America, right here in the Central Valley. But the entire Yokut tribe was nearly wiped out with the destruction of Tulare Lake.
Tulare Lake is now farmland, but if the 1,000 square foot mile lake was here today, Kettleman City and Lemoore would be lakefront communities. The town of Alpaugh would be an island, and Corcoran would be underwater. Tonight, Action News anchor Gene Higginson shows us why the lake's disappearance led to the near extinction of the Yokut Indians.
The Yokut people lived along the shores of Tulare Lake for at least 2,000 years. In their story of creation, they believe the mountains on each side of the lake, the Sierra and the Coast Range, were scooped from the mud of the lake bottom. Its waters were the source of all life, the abundant plants and wildlife they lived on. Rob Hansen is a professor at College of the Sequoias and an expert on the lake and its history.
If you wanted to pick a group of Native Americans that had the highest density population because there was so much reliable food from year to year that they didn't have to even go to war with one another. They lived in a naturally rich area. It was Central California. There were more Yokuts in compact communities, villages, than in any other Native American group anywhere.
The Yokut population around the lake in 1800 was estimated to be around 20,000 people. This educational film, made back in the 1960s, had Yokuts reenact some of the customs of their ancestors. They used the reeds or tules that surrounded the lake for everything from baskets to houses to the canoes they used to travel the huge lake.
For most of us, that's just really hard to imagine that there was a lake that was roughly 30 miles east and west, sitting out here in the middle of the valley. It was very, very huge but shallow.
But in the 1850s, farmers descended on the fertile Central Valley, diverting its rivers, the Kern, the Kaweah, the Tule, and the Kings, to irrigate their crops. In 60 years, the shallow lake was gone, and so were the Indians who'd stood in the way.
In 1853, the governor declared extermination of all Digger Indians in the state of California.
The first governor of California, Peter Burnett, did issue an order for the extermination of all Native Americans in the state. Over the years, the bounty on Indian scalps was raised from 25 cents each to $5 each. Indian men, women, and children were hunted down like animals in the valley and the foothills. The bounty, along with disease and famine caused by the loss of the lake and surrounding natural habitat, decimated the Yokuts. By 1880, a population of 20,000 had dwindled to just 600. Raymond Jeff is the historian for the Tachiyokut tribe, survivors of the Yokuts who once lived along Tulare Lake. He says the tragedy of his people is one of the greatest untold stories in California history. Tulare Lake is now dry, home to some of the world's biggest cotton fields, subsidized and protected by the federal government with an elaborate multi-million-dollar flood control system aimed at keeping water out of the natural lake. But it doesn't always work.
Tulare Lake has never reappeared in its full size, although it's been pretty full on a few occasions.
In the late 1930s, floodwaters forced the return of Tulare Lake. It lasted through the duration of World War II, long enough for pelicans to nest along the lake shore again. Floods in the early 80s revived the lake again and destroyed the cotton crop. To stop that from happening again, during the latest spring floods, the Army Corps of Engineers diverted heavy runoff that would have flowed into the lake bed north into the San Joaquin River, causing flooding and raising questions about the logic of keeping water out of a natural lake bed.
I've never even seen the lake. All I did was read about it.
Meantime, the Yokut population is on the rebound. In recent years, they've developed a casino, and reed houses have given way to modern subdivisions. But the lake has lived on in their legends. The song sung in this nearly 50-year-old film is about the lake.
They're telling the lake, you could do anything you want with me, but I'm right here. This is my home.
In Kings County, Gene Higginson, ABC 30 Action News.
Now, what you just saw highlighted there was the entire history of a certain area in California where there used to be lakes. And because of this oppressor, they completely irrigated the lake and drained it of the water in order to kill and commit genocide against the native population. There were entire areas where there was never a lake, where they diverted water from the Colorado River flowing into Mexico to starve out those tribes there in order to create a lake so that they could build, lakefront homes on the Salton Sea. Like, these people have done unimaginable evil on the planet and in this country. And when you see plagues of biblical proportions falling on their head, you should thank the Most High that He is merciful and He is just and He never forgets. I watched that flooding in Utah, and I say, pray the Most High bring more flooding in Utah. I see the flooding in California, and I say, I pray the Most High brings more flooding. I pray the Most High does all the things that need to be done in order to reduce and diminish this oppressor back to being the four-legged hairy beast that he was on the earth during the time when we were in obedience to our power and we stood to prove ourselves righteous and honorable on the earth. That time is returning, black man. We are living in the days of plagues of biblical proportions. We are living in the days where the Most High is moving on the earth. We are living in the days where we have to acknowledge and realize that we are all we got. But we cannot gather together under our oppressor's culture and our oppressor's ideology and our oppressor's way of life. We have to return back to the former glory that we had, and that is becoming the children that the Most High called us to be, acknowledging our identity as Israelites and keeping the law, statutes, and commandments in that book called the Bible so that we can restore a sense of pride and dignity, honor, and integrity into us so that we can be able to survive and band together in these times. Well, I appreciate all y'all for tuning in, for rocking out with me, man. We've been live for about an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to get up out of here. That was Angry Perspective for the day, man. Like, share, subscribe, comment. If there's any stories out there that y'all see that y'all want me to cover and talk about, share them with me at angryblackmanmedia@gmail.com. We're on Facebook and YouTube at Angry Black Man Media. You can catch me on Instagram at Only One Soccer War. Also, TikTok, Toxic Masculinity 144. I'm going to be streaming on TikTok as well, y'all. You know what I'm saying? TikTok, Toxic Masculinity 144. It's your man, Chief Sock G, Captain Soccer War out of 1 West 125th Street in Harlem, New York, under command of General Yohana since 1969. For those of you who are uninitiated, who are unlearned, you may not know what that means, but to those who are in the know, that means I am certified, official, authentic, and the real McCoy. I'll see y'all next time on Angry Black Man Media. Shalom.